Hi, I thought I would add another video that will cover a lot of extra shadow work and also how to take some of the elements around in the digital and bring them into your image over the top of the baby. That's how I find sometimes you can combine the two images beautifully by finding little elements of flowers that you can lay over the top of the baby, and it kind of brings the images together nicely. So I'm going to start with just plain flower drop, and I know that I can use black as my shadow layer, so I've gone for a darker digital. So with this one I'm going to use this particular image. This is straight out of camera. I wanted to just quickly cover over how you darken down the edge of the Posie. So all I do before I bring the image across is do a few edits on the baby. I won't cover those for time reasons. What I start off by doing is an exposure layer. So you grab your curves layer, bring that down, right down, okay, and then I mask that off, and then invert the mask, come back in with my white brush at 100%, and then I paint that in around to darken down the Posie, because the reasoning for that is that you want that as your shadow layer. So you want it to be dark. So you can do anything you want. You can either paint dark over the top of that or whatever it might be, but that just allows you to start to paint that layer in, and you're going to have shadow. So then what I do is go in nice and close. I've got my black brush, so I'm going to erase that off now. So I'll just get my brush. So that's what you do there, just to go up all around the edges there, so that that curves layer is taken off. So I won't do the whole thing, just for the sake of time. And literally you just go up, right up to the edge, so that when you bring this image in, your edge is nice and dark around the edge. So this is also the first step if I am also doing an image for black. So that, say you wanted to have an image that has a black and white finish to it, so it's a solid black. So what I would do is wouldn't use the curves layer, but I would use a solid color. I paint black, so I've got solid black. Again, I use the same technique. I mask that, invert the mask, and then I paint it back in. This is how I do all of my black and white, so that I know the black area is solid black. And this is why someone said, well, why would you put the nude wrap? Well, it doesn't really matter, because I'm still painting up to the edge of the image here in black. So that's how I do my black and whites, making sure that there are no editing marks. So with this one, you just paint up around. And what is easy to actually get this off the edge, I'll just go over it, just give you a brief idea, is what's easy then to see the edge. So you go right up to the edge, then you can reduce the opacity on that layer, come back with your black brush, and then you can see the edge where you're bringing off your black. This is taking off the black layer there. So I won't do it all. Whoops, I've just gone over the edge there. So I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. So you just come back in, and then you can see your edge, and that's how you paint. You erase all that entire edge off. So that's how you do that basic technique. So I'm just going to come back out here. So I'm going to show you, this one here is one I've done before, this one here. So I've actually added on a color layer. So this one here is just this image completely finished using those techniques. So this one here, I just wanted to bring it into this digital. So I'm going to apply a hue and saturation layer here. So you can see how I might just bring that down a little bit, so that's a little bit of a softer purple. All I've done is painted on a hue and saturation layer. I've increased the saturation up in that area so that I get that really nice brighter pink, rather than this kind of a little bit more of a yellowy organic tone of the mauve. So what I'm going to do is I'll flatten that image, so you can do that in here as well if you like, image. What I will do is bring this image across to my composite. So I think I flattened that. Yes, I did. So I'm just going to get the size. So I'm going to go Control T and hold down the Shift key as I make this as big as I need it. I'll bring her down there. So another thing you can do in your positioning is change the opacity. So that's the opacity changing there, so I can see how big I want her in comparison to, I kind of feel like the hands need to be straight, so I'll keep those hands nice and straight there. That's probably about big enough to hide the fluff in the middle. And she's going to be a little bit on the side. And her eye's kind of sitting in the third area there. So what I've got is that looking beautiful there. I think that's a nice size. We can change it as we go, but I'll just put the opacity back up. I'm going to mask that off and now paint it back in. So I've masked it off, and now I'm going to do invert the mask, and I'll paint that back in at 100%. So I'll just get all of that there. Making sure you cover everything. This is usually where I'll just do a double take, make sure I'm happy with the position, because I may be kind of deep etching some of these flowers around the edges of the baby. So I'll bring her down a little bit. I'll just make sure that I can't see too much fluff. I can't. That's good. I don't want to see any fluff. So what I'll then go and do is get my black brush. So that means that I'm erasing around the edges. So I'll just take my brush. I go back in at about, no, it doesn't really matter. It's just a low opacity. And then I'm going to erase that black off. So what it's going to do is also leave the edge of my subject so that I can then paint that back in. So I'm just going to get that hard black edge to go, because you can see with the direction of the light, this is where extra shadows are going to go. This is where I'm going to have to deep etch right up to the edge of my hand so that I don't have a lot of that black showing, because the light's coming from the left. You can see that. You can also see that the light is brighter on the subject, so I will likely add a little bit more light to the backdrop so that they match. So another way you can check how you're going is to press your backspace key and see how you're going in terms of what of the image is left there. So I just want to make sure that I take a lot of that away. And because I've still got my edge there, it means that I'm going to be able to come back in and just paint the solid edge back in. So I'm erasing that layer now, the black part. So now I'm going to come back with my white brush. So that's going to go back up to 100%. Oops, I have to come back in with that one. So I'm back with my white. I'm just flipping between the brushes. Go back up to 100%. So I'm painting that heart back in there. So what I do is just use the small brush so that I can get in nice and close to that edge. Oops, that one happened. So what I'll do as well is just go back in here and make sure I've got all those edges covered. So I'll bring my brush up nice and big so that I get all of that covered at 100%, so that making sure my image has every bit's back in it. So another thing you can do, I can see that I've got a little bit of fluff on the left hand side, so I just might go out and see if I want to change that at all. I'll get my, what am I doing, my black brush, because I'll erase some of that dark here. So I'm at 9%, and I'm just going around and getting some of the darkness that kind of sitting around the edge of that. I don't want to have a dark edge around that edge of that wrap and the hand. When I start bringing the shadows back in, I just don't want to have a really, see those dark edges? I don't want to have any of those. So I'm just taking some of that away. And then what I'll do is come back out and see if I want to, now that's kind of rough, just so that we're not going to take forever. There's a little bit of fluff there, so what you can do, I might just choose to do a layer and then liquefy it in a little bit, see if I can get away with it without it looking too stretched. Let's just see if that's going to help me a little bit. I'll see if I can move her over a little bit. Where is she? It doesn't bother me. I might just leave it there. It doesn't bother me too much. So what I'll do now is, once I've done that, before I start to put the shadowing on, I might just see if there are some flowers that can overlap. So what I do is take my subject, I take the opacity back, and then I can see up here that these will overlap nicely. So what I'm going to do is erase. So I take my black brush, so I'll just make sure I've got my white brush there, and then I take my black brush at 100%, and then I erase that off here, off that leaf that's going to come back in over the top. Now these, it's really important to know that you're going to have to put shadowing under this, because if the leaf is over the top of the edge here, you're going to have shadowing. So there's one there. I might just see if we've got something over this side we can just get in over here as well. I don't quite know what the shape of this one is, but we'll have a look. There's a bit of a nice pink petal there that might overlap the hand. What I do is just take it off, and then I see if it looks half decent. There's one flower leaf there. We'll see how that looks. It may not look good, but it's worth a try. Sometimes I just play around and see what looks good. This might look nice overlapping up here. Just see where the edge of the flower is when we come back in. I don't think there's anything. It's got to be believable. You can't just kind of bring half a flower back in. See if that's going to work. Alright, so let's bring it back in and see what's working and not working. I think this probably won't work down here, so I'll go back to my white brush. Let me change. It won't. Where are we? Back up here. I'll go back to my white brush, and then I'm going to bring it back in. This one I think will work, so we will bring the black brush back and take the whole petals in, so that's working for me. So then these ones are looking good too up here. We'll just do some more edge work, get those finished off. This one doesn't look too bad actually, so that just means I'll get that little flower over here. Do a bit of shadowing as well after. Not sure about this one. We'll have a look. It could work. We'll come back out and just see if it's working. We'll add some more shadows. That looks nice. So then I have to take the shadow, the thing off the whole area. Let's see if that leaf, there we go, there's that whole leaf there. So we'll just come in nice and close and bring this back. So I've got my white brush again. I'm just coming in nice and close to that flower. So here I'll come in nice and close. Oops. That shadow looks realistic there, so I might just leave it. That shadow's looking pretty good too, so this has got a bit of fluff there, which I don't want. The shadowing's looking pretty good. Let's get a little bit more. Looking good. You can see how the shadow's looking good there. I think that's probably well and truly enough. We've got a few flowers overlapping. We've got nothing on that side, which I don't mind. Just got to put some shadow over here because that looks a little bit out of place. So I might just see, no, there's nothing on the top there I can bring over. It's just too big, that flower at the top. So what I'll then do is just take any shadow I've got left off these areas of the flowers that are coming over the top. So I've got 100% and I've got my black brush, which is erasing all of the any of the black shadow off these areas because they won't have any shadow on if they're coming over the top. That there. Alright, so what I'm going to do is try now to do a little bit of shadow work. So what I will do then is another curves layer, which is underneath my subject. You can see that. I'm going to bring that down and then I will mask that off so that then I paint it back where I want it. So I've got my white brush so that I'll paint it at a really low opacity. So I'll go back out of the image and then I'll see where I want my shadow, because if this is actually where the baby was, you've got to follow the shadow the light's coming from here on the baby, that means the shadow's going to start over here. They're going to fall back over here. So I'm going to add my shadows in there, especially down here, nice and dark. So you can see there where that's giving the nice sense of a shadow down on that right side. The other thing I want to do is use the same layer, curves layer, but this time bring up the exposure on underneath. That's on my background, so that's come up on the top. So this I'm going to do the same thing, mask that off, and then I'm going to I've got a 9% opacity brush, and I'm going to start to lift some of these areas here. Yeah. So I'll just show you what that looks like, taking some of that off so that we get that nice lightness coming from this side of the image. So here we go, this is where the light's on the baby, so this really, you want this nice and light. And still, what I'll probably do is some more shadows over the top. So what I will do now is I'll do a layer, new layer. I'll do no color, normal, soft light. I'll tick that box, fill with neutral grey. That one is going to come on the top of my subject because I'm going to do some shadow work on that flower. So we've got my black brush because that's going to give me my shadow. I'll go right down to about 6%. So if this flower was on the top, see how that's shadowy under that petal? I'll just add a few more shadows under there. Because I'm following the path of light. If light was coming from this direction, then you're going to throw some shadows directly under here. I'll just increase that. Doesn't take me forever. See how that's quite dark, so what I'll do is even more, come in a bit closer, come down a bit smaller. Because what I'm doing is actually replicating some of this here because it looks realistic, so I'm just going to try and do the same thing. Now, let's just see how that's looking. See the shadow there? There. So we'll just keep working on that so that we've got a very similar look here, and I'll bring that shadow down a bit. There we go. I think we're looking good there. I'll just come out so you can see that there's a nice little shadow there with that that petal is. So then this is over the top of the image. So what you can do is also do some on the top of the hand. So this probably needs a bit of shadowing here. So it has the sense that that flower's over the top of the hand. And that needs a bit more shadowing, I think, here. So what I'm feeling here is this darkness here along the edge of the hand. So what I might do is go to my baby image and bring out some of that darkness at 6% opacity here. So that's going to come out a little bit. So I might just come in close to the image and use my black brush to erase some of that dark line that I can see there. I just don't want that dark line on the edge of the hand because then it looks out of place. So I'm just reducing that with 6% excuse me, opacity brush. So now what I might do is just bring that back out evenly with my white brush. So that you don't see that line around the edge of the arm, the hand. Then I'll put some more dark along here. So I've got some nice shadows running along there. Nice and dark. I feel like there could be, there we go. So I might just pop out, see how our shadows are looking. It's looking pretty good. I've lost that dark line there along the baby, so I'm probably ready to flatten and do a little bit more shadow work just to make it all come together. So I'm going to flatten that. So what I might just turn the layers off so you can see there, that one with the edges gone. And then I will just flatten that image. I'll come back out, see how we're looking. I might do another curves layer where I will bring some more shadow work in. So curves, I'm going to put a mask on, invert that mask. Then I'm going to come in with a low opacity brush and just pick some of the areas where I feel like are a bit highlighted. This here is a bit highlighted on her arm. Just want to pull that back a little bit, pull that back. I feel like I want to put some more shadows on this side, so I'll just darken this side down, especially around here where it's meeting the flowers. I feel like that light really would put a bit more of a shadow on this side. Just enhancing those shadows along the edge. What I do is tend to follow the line of fabric too, because if you have a shadow, you're going to have a shadow that goes in and out of the lines of fabric as well. So I'll show you that. There, it kind of pops. Just so that it's not a solid flat shadow. Shadows don't fall as solidly, so they fall across textures. So when you are shadowing, just make sure you look at the textures, because you will find that shadow looks more believable if you really follow the textures, so that it looks like the shadow is going in and out of these textures. Otherwise, that's what I find with when I'm watching some people editing, is reviewing editing, is that there's a solid line of shadow, and shadows just don't work that way. If it's three-dimensional, it has different textures. It also is the shape of the baby. It's not an exact round shape. So I might add some more in there. And that is about it.